My name is Everly and I'm 35 years old. For 4 years, my parents told everyone I disappeared after I stopped sending money home. That's the story they built, the one they repeated at family dinners, church gatherings, and every relative's phone call that asked about me. Disappeared, like I was fog that had simply lifted one morning and never came back. The truth was simpler and uglier than that. I had stopped answering their calls because I finally understood what those calls always meant. Every single one started with warmth and ended with a request for money, rent, medical bills, my younger brother's tuition, my father's failed business ventures. There was always a reason, always an emergency, always me expected to fix it because I was the one who left home first and made something of myself. In the city, for 12 years, I sent a portion of every paycheck home. I told myself it was love. It took me a long time to realize it was fear dressed up as loyalty. The breaking point came the year I lost my job in a corporate downsizing and had nothing left to give. I called my mother to explain, expecting understanding, maybe even concern for how I was doing. Instead, she asked how they were supposed to pay the electric bill. Not one question about whether I was okay. Not one word about my own struggle. That phone call ended something in me that had been fraying for years. I stopped calling. I stopped answering. And within months, I heard through a cousin that my parents had started telling people I'd vanished, gone no contact for no reason. An ungrateful daughter who'd abandoned her family in their time of need. It was easier for them to be victims of my disappearance than to admit they had drained me until there was nothing left to drain. I moved twice in those 4 years, each time a little further from the reach of anyone who might come looking. I rebuilt my life carefully and quietly. I found new work in logistics management, modest but steady. I found a small circle of friends who didn't need anything from me except my company. I found a small house with a blue door that I painted myself on a Sunday afternoon. And for the first time in my adult life, that house felt like it was mine and only mine. No obligations waiting behind the front door. No emergencies disguised as love, just quiet. Then they sent my sister to find where I live. I didn't know it at the time, but my sister Ren had been asking around for months, piecing together fragments from old mutual friends, a former coworker who mentioned a city, a delivery receipt my mother had somehow gotten hold of. My parents wanted proof, not proof that I was alive and well. They didn't care about that. They wanted proof of my address so they could reopen the pipeline they'd lost. My mother's exact instruction to Ren, as I'd later learn, was simple. Find her door, take a picture, and send it home. Not knock, not talk, just document it like evidence in a case file. That was how much I mattered to them. A location to be logged. It was a Thursday evening in early autumn when I heard footsteps on my porch. I looked through the window and saw a woman standing there holding up her phone, angling it toward my front door like she was framing a photograph. It took me a full 3 seconds to recognize her. My sister, older, her hair cut shorter than I remembered, but unmistakably her. My heart did something strange in my chest, something between longing and dread. Without thinking, I opened the door. She lowered her phone slowly, her mouth opened, but no words came out at first. I watched the color drain from her face in real time. Watch her eyes move from my face to the door frame behind me, to the porch light I'd installed myself, to the welcome mat with my initials stitched into the corner. This was not a stranger's house she'd stumbled upon. This was undeniably, unmistakably me, standing very much alive in front of her. She knocked, looked past me, and went pale. She took one step back, then another, her sneakers scraping against my porch steps as she retreated down them without ever taking her eyes off me. I called her name, but she didn't answer. She backed down the steps, phone already at her ear, her voice shaking as she said the words that would change everything. That came after, "Mom, you need to see this. It's not what you." Her voice cracked and cut off as she turned and hurried toward her car, leaving me standing in my own doorway, stunned. My hands still on the frame of the door I had painted blue with my own two hands. I stood there, long after her car pulled away, trying to understand what I had just witnessed, because the look on my sister's face wasn't the look of someone who'd found a runaway. It was the look of someone who'd just seen a ghost. I didn't move for a long time after Ren's car disappeared down the street. Her words kept looping in my mind. "Mom, you need to see this." Those were the first words my sister blurted into her phone after she saw me standing in mine. my doorway. Her voice was shaky, almost panicked, and before I could hear my mother's reply, she stepped further away, leaving me with 1,000 unanswered questions. Need to see what? Why had the sight of me turned the color from her face? Why did she react as though she had stumbled across a ghost instead of her own sister? I couldn't make sense of it. After she hurried back to her car and drove away, I went inside. I locked the front door without thinking, more from routine than fear, and sat in complete silence. My phone rested in my hands while my thoughts raced in every direction. I replayed every second of our encounter, trying to understand what I had missed. Nearly an hour passed before I finally gathered enough courage to call her. She answered. Before the first ring had completely finished, Everly, she didn't say my name with certainty. It sounded cautious, almost fragile, as though speaking it aloud might cause me to disappear. You're really alive. I frowned. Of course I'm alive. I laughed nervously, expecting her to explain the strange comment immediately, but she didn't. I reminded her that I had simply moved away. I'd been living quietly in another state for years, working, paying my bills, building a peaceful life, and staying out of the chaos I'd grown up with. There was another long silence. When she finally spoke again, every word seemed painfully heavy. 18 months ago, she whispered, Mom told everyone you died. I felt as though the room had suddenly lost all its air. What? She told the entire family. Everyone believed it. I couldn't respond. She continued carefully, almost apologetically, as though repeating the story itself felt wrong. According to our mother, I'd been killed in a car accident while living out of state. She claimed the accident happened so far from home that no family members were able to travel. She said my body had been cremated immediately and that bringing me home wasn't possible. There had been no funeral, no viewing, no burial, only a story no one questioned. She told relatives it was too painful to discuss. Whenever anyone asked for details, she broke into tears or changed the subject. Eventually, people stopped asking. Instead, they offered sympathy. Neighbors delivered meals. Friends from church prayed for her. People hugged her and told her how strong she was. While I was quietly living my ordinary life, my own mother accepted condolences for my death. My sister told me there had even been a memorial gathering. It wasn't elaborate, just a folding table in the backyard, a framed photograph of me, fresh flowers, a candle my mother lit every Sunday evening while people admired her strength for carrying such unbearable grief. My sister had stood there crying. She believed every word. She mourned me. She spent holidays believing her older sister would never come home again. Listening to her describe it made my stomach twist. I couldn't decide which hurt more, the fact that my parents had erased me, or the fact that they had convinced the people I loved to grieve someone who had never actually died. Eventually, I found my voice. Why, she sighed, the missing person story wasn't working anymore. Apparently, after I left, my parents had first told people I had disappeared unexpectedly. But over time, neighbors began asking questions. Had anyone contacted the police? Was there a missing person investigation? Why wasn't anyone searching? Why hadn't there been news coverage? Why wasn't anyone organizing volunteers? Every question required another lie. Eventually, it became easier to replace disappearance with death. Death ended conversations. Dead people weren't expected to call. Dead people couldn't suddenly appear at holiday dinners. Most importantly, dead people didn't inspire investigations. A tragic accident brought sympathy. A missing daughter invited suspicion. My mother chose whichever version protected her image best. She buried me with words because it was easier than admitting I had willingly walked away. The realization settled over me slowly. She hadn't lost a daughter. She had lost control. And rather than tell the truth that her daughter chose distance over dysfunction, she invented a tragedy everyone would accept. My sister continued explaining what had led her to my house. It turned out my parents had never completely abandoned hope of finding me, not because they missed me, not because they wanted reconciliation, because they believed I might still be financially useful. While sorting through old boxes in the attic, my mother had found one of my old pay stubs. My father immediately wondered whether I still had the same employer, the same bank account. or some other financial connection they could somehow benefit from. If they found me quietly, perhaps they could repair things privately. Perhaps no one would ever discover they had falsely announced my death. Perhaps I would help them. The idea never crossed their minds that I had absolutely no reason to return. My sister admitted she hadn't known any of this before beginning her search. She genuinely believed she was following an outdated employment record that would lead nowhere. Instead, it led her straight to my front porch. She found me standing behind a bright blue door with my initials printed neatly on the welcome mat, very much alive, very much at peace, very much beyond their control. After hearing everything, I asked the only question that truly mattered. "Did you tell them?" She answered immediately, "No." She explained that she had ended the phone call with our mother while still sitting in my driveway. She couldn't process what had happened. The woman she had mourned was standing right in front of her. Everything she'd believed for the past year and a half had collapsed in a matter of minutes. She wasn't only grieving for me anymore. She was grieving the truth. She realized our parents hadn't just lied to everyone else. They had lied to her. They had manipulated her emotions, used her tears, allowed her to carry genuine heartbreak over a completely fabricated loss. "I need time," she admitted quietly. "I don't even know what to think." I understood. "You don't have to decide anything today," I told her. "Take whatever time you need." Then I added something that surprised even me. "My door will always be open for you, not for our parents, not for anyone chasing money, only for the sister who had actually searched because she cared." That night we stayed on the phone for more than 3 hours. We filled in years of silence. She told me about birthdays, graduations, illnesses, family arguments, and ordinary moments I'd missed. I shared stories about rebuilding my life, about decorating my little house exactly the way I wanted, about learning what peace felt like after years of confusion, about discovering that happiness wasn't loud. Sometimes it was simply waking up without fear. Sometimes it was drinking coffee on my porch while watching birds gather near the garden. Sometimes it was realizing no one expected anything from me except honesty. For the first time in years, we weren't speaking through guilt, obligation, or family expectations. We were simply sisters. The conversations continued over the following weeks, then months. She began visiting regularly. At first she stayed only an hour or two, eventually entire weekends. We spent quiet evenings sitting on my porch while I watered the flowers lining the fence. Sometimes we talked endlessly. Sometimes we barely spoke at all. The silence between us no longer felt uncomfortable. It felt safe. Little by little, she stopped playing the role our parents had assigned to her. She was no longer the family peacemaker, no longer the daughter expected to solve every problem, no longer the messenger carrying everyone's emotional burdens. She finally started asking herself what she wanted instead of what everyone else expected. She never publicly exposed our parents. She didn't start arguments. She didn't demand apologies she knew would never be sincere. She simply chose distance. Sometimes walking away says more than confrontation ever could. As for my parents, they never came knocking. No surprise visits, no emotional letters, no dramatic pleas for forgiveness. Whether it was pride, embarrassment, or the realization that their lies had finally trapped them, they stayed away. Perhaps they finally understood something they had refused to believe for years. A person who leaves to protect their peace doesn't always come back. Some doors close because healing requires them to. Whenever autumn arrives, I find myself thinking about the afternoon my sister appeared unexpectedly on my porch. I remember her pale face, the confusion in her eyes, the trembling in her voice when she realized I wasn't the memory she'd been mourning. It remains one of the strangest moments of my life. Imagine discovering that people had attended your memorial while you were busy living your ordinary Tuesday. Imagine learning your own death had become someone else's convenient story. It sounds impossible, yet it happened. Oddly enough, the experience taught me something invaluable. Being forgotten by people who only valued what I could provide wasn't the tragedy. The real gift was finding people who valued my presence instead of my usefulness. Family isn't defined by shared blood or matching last names. It's defined by honesty, respect, and the freedom to be yourself without without fear of manipulation. Sometimes the people who claim to love you the most only remember your existence when they need something from you. The people who truly love you simply knock on the door, hoping you're okay. Those are the relationships worth protecting. Those are the ones worth opening your heart to. And every time I unlock that blue front door, I remember that choosing peace was never abandoning my family. It was finally choosing myself.